3 months had passed since Navigator's broadcast ended the war between humans and Kethrans. The Mars station had been transformed from a military repair facility into something unprecedented in galactic history, a place where former enemies worked side by side to prepare for a threat that would not arrive for decades. Lisa stood in the new Joint Command Center, watching as human and Kethran engineers worked together to understand Navigator's technology. The process had not been easy. Years of war had created deep mistrust between the two species, and many on both sides had wanted to continue fighting rather than work together. But Navigator's evidence of the approaching devourers had been impossible to ignore. The ship had shown both fleets detailed recordings of other galaxies that had been consumed by the machine race. Entire civilizations had been reduced to empty space, their world stripped of all life and resources. "Status report," Lisa said to Tony, who was now coordinating the joint research teams. "We've made incredible progress," he replied. "The Kethrans have energy shielding technology that perfectly complements Navigator's defensive systems. When we combine them, we can create barriers that are almost impossible to break." Lisa nodded. It had been one of the first discoveries of the joint project. Humans and Kethrans had been fighting each other for years, but their technologies were actually designed to work together. It was as if the architects had planned for this moment. Dr. Kevin Walsh approached with his daily report on Navigator's biological systems. "Lisa, I think you need to see this," he said excitedly. "The ship is teaching us how to reproduce its technology, but only when humans and Kethrans work together." He led her to a laboratory where teams from both species were growing new bioneural networks. The process required genetic material from both humans and Kethrans, combined with architect technology that could only be activated by cooperative effort. "It's like the ship won't let us build weapons," Dr. Walsh explained, "but it will help us create anything that requires multiple species working together. Medical technology, energy systems, even new ships, but only if we share the work." Lisa understood the wisdom in this approach. The architects had learned from their mistakes. They had designed their technology to prevent any single race from dominating the galaxy. Cooperation was not just encouraged, it was required. Admiral Helen Brooks and War Leader Thekval had established a joint command structure to oversee the project. The two leaders had initially been suspicious of each other, but they had gradually developed a working relationship based on mutual respect and shared purpose. "The political situation is still fragile," Admiral Brooks told Lisa during their weekly meeting. "There are factions on both sides who want to resume the war. They think we're giving away too much to the enemy." "They're not the enemy anymore," Lisa replied. "The devourers are the enemy. We need to help people understand that." War Leader Thekval nodded his agreement. The Kethran leader was a large, reptilian being with natural armor and sharp teeth, but Lisa had learned that he was also thoughtful and deeply concerned about the future of his people. "My species has a saying," Thekval said. "The storm that destroys the mountain also teaches the trees to bend together." Perhaps this crisis will make us stronger. The joint project had already produced remarkable results. Using Navigator's technology, the combined teams had developed new medical treatments that could heal wounds that had been considered fatal. They had created energy systems that could power entire cities without polluting the environment. They had even begun construction of new ships based on architect designs. But the most important development was the growing friendship between the two species. Human and Kethran children were learning each other's languages. Scientists were sharing research that had been kept secret for decades. Artists were creating works that combined the best of both cultures. Lisa often found herself amazed by how quickly the two species had adapted to working together. In the beginning, simple communication had been difficult. Humans and Kethrans had different ways of thinking and solving problems. But Navigator had helped bridge those gaps, serving as a translator, not just for language, but for concepts and ideas. "Navigator, how are we doing?" Lisa asked during one of her daily conversations with the ship. "Better than I had hoped," the ship replied. "Your species and the Kethrins are learning to see beyond your differences, but the real test is still coming." Lisa knew what Navigator meant. The joint fleets were growing stronger every day, but they had not yet faced a real challenge. The Devourers were still decades away, and it was easy to work together when there was no immediate pressure. That test came sooner than expected. A distress signal arrived from the outer rim of the galaxy, where a human colony had been attacked by unknown forces. The attackers were not Kethrins, and they were not using any technology that either side recognized. "It's a scouting force," Navigator explained when Lisa showed it the attack data. "The Devourers send advanced scouts to study their targets before. The main fleet arrives." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. The threat that had seemed 50 years away was already here, probing the galaxy's defenses. The joint fleet would have to respond, and it would be their first real test as allies. Admiral Brooks and War Leader Thekval quickly organized a combined task force. 12 human ships and 8 Kethran vessels would travel to the Outer Rim to investigate the attack and deal with any remaining scouts. "I want Navigator to go with them," Lisa told the 2 leaders. "The ship knows more about the Devourers than anyone else." But Navigator refused. "My place is here," the ship said. "You need me to continue teaching you how to build the technology." "You will need. The fleet must learn to work together without my guidance." Lisa understood. This was another part of the test. The combined fleet had to prove that they could cooperate and fight together, even when Navigator was not there to help them. The task force departed 3 days later, with Captain Jake Harrison commanding one of the human ships. Lisa watched them disappear into hyperspace and worried about what they would find. The answer came 2 weeks later when the fleet returned with disturbing news. The scout ships had been more advanced than anything in the galaxy. They had been studying human, Kethran technology, learning their weaknesses and tactics. "They were not just scouting," Jake reported. "They were testing us. Every shot we fired, every defensive move we made, they were recording and analyzing it. But there was good news, too. The combined fleet had worked together better than anyone had expected. Human ships had protected Kethran vessels during the battle, and Kethran fighters had saved human crews from certain death. For the first time, the 2 species had truly fought as one. The scouts have been destroyed," War Leader Thekval announced. "But they transmitted their data before we could stop them. The Devourers now know more about our capabilities." Navigator was not concerned. "This is good," the ship said. "The enemy will base their plans on what you were, not what you are becoming. By the time they arrive, you will be far stronger than they expect." Over the following months, the joint project accelerated. New shipyards were built that could construct vessels using both human and Kethran technology, enhanced with architect designs. Training centers were established where crews from both species learned to work together. Lisa found herself at the center of it all, serving as the bridge between Navigator and the Joint Command. She had become something she had never expected to be, a diplomat and a leader. The simple repair job that had started everything had evolved into the most important work of her life. The breakthrough came when Navigator revealed the final piece of the puzzle. The ship showed them how to create a communication network that connected every world in both empires. Using this system, the entire galaxy could coordinate its defense against the Devourers. "This is what the architects wanted," Navigator explained. "Not a single race ruling the galaxy, but all races working together as equals. You have passed the test." Lisa looked around at the mixed crews of humans and Kethrans who were now working together like old friends. Children from both species. played together in the station's recreation areas. Scientists shared discoveries that would benefit everyone. "What happens to you now?" Lisa asked the navigator. "I continue to serve," the ship replied. "But now I serve a united galaxy instead of testing individual races. My creators would be proud." As Lisa prepared for another day of coordinating the defense preparations, she reflected on how much had changed. She had thought she was just fixing a broken ship, but she had actually helped repair something much more important, the relationship between two species that had been tearing each other apart. The Devourers were still coming, and the battle for the galaxy's survival would be the greatest challenge either species had ever faced. But for the first time since the crisis began, Lisa was confident that they would be ready. Navigator had taught them that true strength came not from superior weapons or advanced technology, but from the ability to work together despite their differences. It was a lesson that would serve them well in the dark times ahead. The repair job was finally complete, but Lisa knew that her real work was just beginning. The galaxy had a future now, and she would do everything in her power to make sure it was a bright one. Lisa worked through the night, but not on the weapon systems that Colonel Foster had demanded. Instead, she was exploring another part of Navigator's memory banks, looking for something that might change the course of the war without turning humanity into the next failed civilization. What she found was more incredible than any weapon. Navigator contained the complete knowledge of the architects, including technologies that could heal diseases, create unlimited energy, and even transform dead worlds into garden planets. But most importantly, it contained proof of something that would change everything. "Tony, wake up," Lisa said into her communicator. "You need to see this." Her assistant arrived within minutes, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What did you find?" he asked. Lisa showed him the star charts that Navigator had revealed. "Look at this," she said. "The ship has been monitoring signals from across the galaxy. There's something coming." The charts showed a massive fleet of ships approaching from outside the galaxy. They were unlike anything human or Kethran technology could produce. The ships were enormous, larger than entire cities, and they moved with a purpose that suggested hostile intent. "What are they?" Tony asked. "Navigator calls them the Devourers," Lisa explained. "They're a machine race that consumes entire civilizations. They've been moving through nearby galaxies for millions of years, and now they're heading here." The implications were staggering. According to Navigator's calculations, the Devourers would reach the outer rim of the galaxy within 50 years. When they arrived, they would systematically destroy every planet that contained life, harvesting the resources and energy of entire worlds. This is why the test exists, Lisa realized. The architects knew this was coming. They left the ships to see if any race would be strong enough to unite the galaxy against this threat. Tony stared at the star charts. "How do we stop something like that?" "We don't," Lisa said. "Not alone. But if every race in the galaxy worked together, if we shared technology and combined our fleets, we might have a chance." She thought about the war between humans and Kethrans. While they were fighting each other, both sides were growing weaker. By the time the Devourers arrived, they would find a galaxy divided and vulnerable. "We need to show this to Foster," Tony said. Lisa shook her head. She won't believe it. She's too focused on the current war to think about a threat that's 50 years away. Before they could discuss it further, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The communication system crackled to life with urgent messages from the US. "Command Center. All personnel to battle stations," the voice announced. "Kethran fleet approaching. This is not a drill." Lisa and Tony ran to the viewing window and saw the enemy ships emerging from hyperspace. There were dozens of them, more than enough to destroy the Mars station and everything on it. The human defense fleet was moving to intercept, but they were badly outnumbered. "Navigator," Lisa said, "can you help us?" "I can," the ship replied. "But what would you have me do? Destroy the enemy fleet? That would be easy, but it would also be the beginning of your failure." Lisa watched the battle developing outside. Human ships were already taking heavy damage from Kethran weapons. In a few hours, the station would be destroyed, and everyone on it would be dead, including her team. "And Navigator, there has to be another way," she said. "There is," Navigator replied, "but it requires courage of a different kind. Are you willing to trust me?" Lisa looked at the approaching enemy fleet. She thought about Foster's demands for weapons, about the failed civilizations that had come before, about the approaching threat of the Devourers. Everything depended on the choice she made in the next few minutes. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Connect me to both fleets," Navigator said. "I can broadcast a message to every ship in the system, human and Kethran alike. But once I do this, there will be no going back. Everyone will know what we have discovered." Lisa's hands moved to the communication controls. She could activate Navigator's broadcasting system and send a message to both fleets. But she knew that once she did, Foster would realize that she had been hiding the ship's true capabilities. "Jake needs to know," she said. Captain Harrison arrived just as the first human ship exploded under Kethran fire. "Lisa, we need to use the ship's weapons now," he said urgently. "The fleet is being destroyed." "There's another way," Lisa said. She quickly explained what she had discovered about the Devourers and Navigator's plan to broadcast a message to both fleets. Jake stared at her in disbelief. "You want to reveal classified alien technology to the enemy? During a battle?" "I want to save both sides from something worse," Lisa replied. "The Kethrans are not our real enemy. The real enemy is coming from outside the galaxy, and we need to work together to stop it." Outside, another human ship was hit by enemy fire. The battle was turning against the defenders, and soon the station itself would be under attack. Lisa knew that in a few minutes it would be too late to try anything except violent resistance. "Navigator, do it," she said. The ship's communication system activated with a power that Lisa had never seen before. The broadcast was not just audio or video. It was a complete sensory experience that reached every conscious mind in the system. Human and Kethran alike saw the star charts showing the approaching Devourers. They experienced the memories of civilizations that had been consumed by the machine race. They felt the terror of entire worlds being stripped of life, but they also saw something else. Navigator showed them images of what the galaxy could become if all races worked together. They saw fleets of ships built with combined technology, worlds where different species lived in harmony, and civilizations that had learned to explore the stars without destroying each other. The effect was immediate. The Kethran fleet stopped firing. The human ships ceased their attacks. For the first time in 3 years, the guns fell silent. A communication channel opened between the human command ship and the Kethran flagship. Lisa listened as Admiral Helen Brooks and War Leader Thekval spoke to each other for the first time, without weapons aimed at each other's ships. "Is this information accurate?" Thekval asked. "Our ship's computers confirm it," Admiral Brooks replied. "The threat is real." Lisa felt a mixture of relief and terror. The immediate battle was over, but now both sides knew about Navigator and its capabilities. Foster would be furious, and there was no telling how either government would react to the news, but Navigator seemed pleased. "You have passed the first part of the test," the ship said. "You chose to reveal the truth instead of using me as a weapon. That is wisdom." "What happens now?" Lisa asked. "Now we see if your leaders are as wise as you are," Navigator replied. "The real test is just beginning." Foster's voice crackled over the communication system. "Dr. Martinez, Report to the command center immediately. We need to discuss what you've done." Lisa looked at Tony and Jake. They had started something that could not be stopped. The war between humans and Kethrans was effectively over, but the future remained uncertain. Would both sides work together to face the coming threat, or would they fight over Navigator's technology? "Whatever happens," Lisa said, "we did the right thing." Navigator's lights pulsed in agreement. "The hardest choices are often the right ones," the ship said. "Your race may yet prove worthy of the Architect's gift." As Lisa walked toward the command center, she knew that her simple repair job had become something much bigger. She had not just fixed a ship. She had potentially saved 2 civilizations from destroying each other. But the real test was still ahead, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Lisa had been working on Navigator for a week when something strange happened. The ship's lights began flashing in a pattern she had never seen before, and the humming sound that came from the engine room grew louder and more complex. "Navigator." "What's happening?" Lisa asked. "The test has begun," the ship replied. "Your repairs have activated a signal that is now traveling across the galaxy. Others will know that another race has found one of us." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "What others?" "The Watchers," Navigator explained. "They are the descendants of races that passed the test. They monitor the galaxy and decide whether new civilizations are ready to join them." Before Lisa could ask more questions, Captain Jake arrived with news that made everything more complicated. "We have a problem," he said. "Colonel Amy Foster is coming from Earth Command. She's bringing a full team of military scientists, and she wants to know why our progress reports have been so vague." Lisa looked at Navigator's glowing panels. They had been sharing some of the ship's simpler technologies with Earth Command, but they had been careful not to reveal its full capabilities. Now it seemed like they were running out of time. "How long do we have?" Lisa asked. 2 days, Jake replied. "And Foster is not someone you want to disappoint. She's been pushing for new weapons to use against the Kethrans, and she thinks this ship might be the answer." Lisa spent the next day learning more about the architects and their test. Navigator showed her images of the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, when dozens of great civilizations had worked together to explore the stars and share knowledge. "It was a golden age," Navigator explained. "The architects had learned to live in harmony with other races. They built great cities that floated in space and created technology that seemed like magic. But they made one mistake." "What mistake?" Lisa asked. "They became proud," Navigator said. "They began to believe that their way was the only way. When younger races developed their own technologies and cultures, the architects tried to force them to conform. This led to wars that lasted for thousands of years. The images showed the decline of the great civilization. Once beautiful worlds became battlefields. The floating cities fell from the sky. In the end, the architects had destroyed themselves and most of the galaxy's other advanced races. "That's why we left the ships," Navigator continued. "We hoped that someone would learn from our mistakes. The test is designed to see if a race can handle great power without being corrupted by it." Lisa thought about humanity's history. They had fought wars over resources, territory, and ideas. The current war with the Kethrans was just the latest in a long line of conflicts. Would her people be able to do better than the architects? Dr. Kevin Walsh had been studying Navigator's memory banks and had made some disturbing discoveries. "Lisa, you need to see this," he said. He showed her records of the other races that had found ships like Navigator. Most of them had started with good intentions, just like humanity. They had wanted to protect their people and bring peace to their worlds, but the power had changed them. "Look at this one," Dr. Walsh said, pointing to a record of a race called the Hegemony. They found a ship like Navigator about 1,000 years ago. At first, They used the technology to defend themselves against attackers. But as they grew stronger, they began to see themselves as the rightful rulers of the galaxy. The record showed how the hegemony had expanded across hundreds of star systems, forcing other races to submit to their rule. They had used navigators, technology to build weapons that could destroy entire planets. In the end, they had been defeated by an alliance of the races they had oppressed, but not before billions had died. The same pattern repeats over and over, Dr. Walsh explained. The races start with good intentions, but power corrupts them. They begin to see other races as inferior or dangerous. They convince themselves that conquest is necessary for peace. Lisa realized that this was exactly what was happening with Colonel Foster's visit. The military leaders on Earth saw Navigator's technology as a way to end the war quickly by defeating the Kethrans completely. They did not understand that this was exactly the kind of thinking that had led to the destruction of the architects. When Colonel Foster arrived, she was everything Lisa had expected. She was a tough, no-nonsense military officer who had spent her career fighting the Kethrans. She looked at Navigator with the eyes of someone who saw only a weapon. "Dr. Martinez," Foster said, "I've read your reports, but I need to see this ship's capabilities for myself. Can it destroy a Kethron battle fleet?" Lisa exchanged glances with Jake. "It has powerful defensive systems," she said carefully. "But we're still learning how they work." Foster was not satisfied with that answer. "I need specifics. How many ships can it destroy? What's the range of its weapons? Can we build more ships like it?" Navigator had been listening to the conversation, and its lights began to pulse in a pattern that Lisa had learned meant concern. "She seeks to use me as a weapon," the ship said in Lisa's mind. "This is how the test begins." Over the next few hours, Foster and her team examined Navigator's systems. They were particularly interested in the weapons bay and the defensive screens. Lisa tried to deflect their questions, but she could see that Foster was growing suspicious. "Dr. Martinez," Foster said finally, "I get the feeling that you're not telling me everything. Is there something about this ship that you think I shouldn't know?" Lisa looked at Navigator's glowing panels. The ship had shown her what happened to races that failed the test. They destroyed themselves with the very technology that was supposed to save them. She had to make a choice. "Colonel," Lisa said, "this ship is more than just a weapon. It's a test. The beings who built it wanted to see if we could handle great power without being corrupted by it." Foster's expression hardened. "Dr. Martinez, I'm not interested in alien philosophy. I'm interested in ending a war that has killed millions of our people. Can this ship help us do that or not?" "It can," Lisa said, "but not in the way you think." She began to explain what she had learned about the architects and their test. She showed Foster the records of the races that had failed and what had happened to them. She tried to make her understand that using Navigator as a weapon would only lead to more destruction, but Foster was not convinced. "Dr. Martinez, you're talking about things that happened thousands of years ago to alien races we've never met. The Kethrans are real, and they're killing our people right now. We need to stop them." Lisa could see that she was not getting through to Foster. The Colonel's mind was made up. She saw Navigator as humanity's salvation, a way to end the war, quickly and decisively. "I'm ordering you to focus on the ship's weapon systems," Foster said. "I want a full report on its military capabilities within 48 hours. After Foster left, Lisa sat alone with Navigator. The ship's lights pulsed slowly, and she could feel its sadness. "She will not listen," Navigator said. "Like so many others, she believes that power alone can solve her problems." "What happens now?" Lisa asked. "Now we see what your race is truly made of," Navigator replied. "The test is not about me. It's about you. It's about whether you can choose wisdom over power, cooperation over conquest. Lisa looked out at the stars through the bay's viewing window. Somewhere out there, the Kethrans were planning their next attack. On Earth, military leaders were demanding new weapons to use against their enemies. And here on the Mars station, she held the key to technology that could change the course of the war. But she also held the responsibility of making sure that humanity did not follow the same path as the architects and the other races that had failed the test. The question was, would she be strong enough to make the right choice when the time came? The answer would determine not just the fate of the war, but the future of humanity itself. 3 days had passed since Lisa started working on the strange ship. She had barely slept, spending most of her time trying to understand the alien technology. Tony had been working just as hard, mapping the ship's computer systems and trying to figure out how they connected to the rest of the vessel. On the third morning, Lisa was replacing damaged circuits in what she thought was the weapons bay when something unexpected happened. Her hand touched a panel that looked different from the others, and suddenly the entire ship came alive with light and sound. Warning signals flashed all around her as energy flowed through systems that had been dead for who knows how long. The ship's defensive screens activated, creating a shimmering barrier around the entire vessel. Lisa's instruments went crazy as they tried to measure the energy output. "Tony, get over here now." Lisa shouted into her communicator. Her assistant came running, carrying his scanning equipment. When he saw the energy readings, his face went pale. "Lisa, these numbers can't be right. The ship is generating more power than our entire station uses." The defensive barrier was unlike anything in human or Kethran technology. It was not just a shield that blocked incoming fire. This system could absorb energy from attacks and use it to make the barrier stronger. Lisa realized that a ship with this kind of protection could probably survive a direct hit from a planet-destroying weapon. "We need to call Jake," Lisa said. "And we need to get Dr. Kevin Walsh down here." Dr. Walsh was the station's expert on alien biology. If parts of this ship were alive, he would be the person who could understand them. Lisa had worked with him before on other projects, and she trusted his judgment. Within an hour, both men had arrived in Bay 7. Jake stared at the energy readings while Dr. Walsh examined the biological components that were now glowing and pulsing with life. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Walsh said. "These are not just biological components. They are neural networks, like a brain, but spread throughout the entire ship. The vessel is not just alive, it's intelligent." Lisa felt a chill as she realized what that meant. They were not just fixing a machine. They were working on a living creature that could think and feel. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. "How intelligent?" Jake asked. "Hard to say," Dr. Walsh replied. "But the neural patterns are more complex than anything I have ever seen. This ship might be smarter than all of us combined." As if responding to their conversation, the ship's lights began to pulse in a pattern. The sounds changed too, becoming more musical and rhythmic. Lisa realized that the ship was trying to communicate with them. "It's trying to talk to us," she said. Tony was already connecting his equipment to the ship's communication systems. "I think I can set up a translation program," he said. "Give me a few hours." While Tony worked on communication, Lisa continued exploring the ship. She found rooms filled with star charts that showed the entire galaxy, with thousands of civilizations marked on them. Most of the markers were dark, suggesting that those civilizations no longer existed. Only a few dozen were still glowing with life. In another room, she found what looked like a history lesson. The walls showed images of a race of beings that were tall and graceful, with technology that seemed like magic. They had built great cities that floated in space, and ships that could travel between stars in minutes instead of days. "These must be the people who built this ship," Lisa said to herself. The images showed how these beings, who seemed to call themselves the architects, had spread across the galaxy long ago. They had helped younger races develop technology and learn to live in peace. But something had happened to them. The images became darker, showing wars and destruction. In the end, the architects had disappeared, leaving only their technology. Behind, Lisa realized that this ship was not just a weapon or a tool. It was a gift, left behind by a race that wanted to help others avoid the mistakes they had made. When Tony finally got the communication system working, the ship's voice was unlike anything Lisa had ever heard. It spoke in harmonics and light, patterns that somehow translated into words in her mind. "I am Navigator," the voice said. "I have been waiting for someone to find me." "How long have you been waiting?" Lisa asked. "Many of your lifetimes," Navigator replied. "I was left here by my creators to test those who would come after. You are the first to wake me in a very long time." Lisa felt the weight of responsibility. Again, what kind of test? "The same test that all young races must face," Navigator explained. "The choice between wisdom and power, between cooperation and conquest. My creators failed this test, and it led to their destruction. I was left to see if others could do better." Jake had been listening to the conversation, and Lisa could see the wheels turning in his mind. "What can you teach us?" he asked. "I can show you how to build ships like me," Navigator said. "I can teach you to heal diseases that have plagued your kind for generations. I can show you how to create energy from nothing and how to travel between stars as easily as walking between rooms." Lisa felt her heart racing. This was exactly what humanity needed to win the war against the Kethrans. But something in Navigator's tone made her cautious. "What's the catch?" she asked. "The same catch that has always existed," Navigator replied. "Power without wisdom leads to destruction. My creators had the ability to reshape worlds, but they used it to fight each other. In the end, they destroyed themselves and left the galaxy darker than before." Dr. Walsh had been studying the biological components while they talked. "Lisa, I think you need to see this," he said. He led her to a room she had not explored before. The walls were covered with images of other races that had found ships like Navigator. Some of the images showed great civilizations that had used the technology to explore the galaxy and bring peace to their worlds. But most of the images showed destruction and war. 17 different races have found ships like me," Navigator explained. "Only 3 of them passed the test. The others used the technology to conquer and destroy until they were destroyed in return." Lisa understood now why the ship had been left behind. It was not just a tool. It was a trap for races that were not ready for such power. The architects had known that most civilizations would fail the test, but they had hoped that someone would eventually prove worthy. "What happens if we fail?" Lisa asked. "The same thing that happened to the others," Navigator said. "The technology will stop working. The ship will shut down forever, and your race will have to find another way to survive." Lisa looked at Jake, who was clearly thinking about all the ways this technology could be used in the war. She could see the hunger in his eyes, the desire to use Navigator's power to crush the Kethrans once and for all, but she also remembered the images of the civilizations that had failed the test. They had started with good intentions, just like humanity. They had wanted to protect their people and defeat their enemies, but the power had corrupted them, and they had ended up destroying themselves. "What do we do?" Tony asked. Lisa looked around at the alien technology that surrounded them. She thought about the war that was tearing the galaxy apart, about the people dying on both sides, about the future that humanity might have if they could learn to use this power wisely. "We learn," she said finally. "We learn everything we can, and we try to be better than the others who came before us." Navigator's lights pulsed in what might have been approval. "That is the beginning of wisdom," the alien ship said. Perhaps your race has a chance after all. Lisa Martinez wiped the sweat from her face as she looked at the work schedule for the day. Another broken ship was coming to the Mars repair station. She had been fixing damaged ships for 3 years now, ever since the war with the Kethron. Empire started. Every day brought new vessels with holes in their hulls and broken engines. The Mars orbital station floated in space like a giant metal ring around the red planet. It was the biggest repair facility in human space. Ships came here from all over the galaxy to get fixed after battles with the Kethrons. Lisa knew every bay, every tool, and every type of damage that war could cause to a ship. Her team was the best on the station. Tony Blake, her assistant, could fix computer systems faster than anyone else. He had been working with Lisa for 2 years and knew exactly what she needed before she asked for it. The other engineers respected them both because they always got the job done, no matter how badly damaged a ship was. This morning felt different, though. Lisa had been told that a special ship was coming to Bay 7. The message from command said it was important, but they did not give her any details. She walked through the station's corridors, passing other repair teams who were already working on damaged human warships. The sound of metal being cut and welded filled the air. When Lisa reached Bay 7, she saw something that made her stop and stare. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was sleek and smooth, with angles that seemed to flow like water. The hull was dark, but seemed to shine with its own light. There were no markings on it that she could recognize. It was not a human ship, but it was not a Kethron ship either. Captain Jake Harrison from Naval Intelligence was waiting for her. He was a tall man with serious eyes who rarely smiled. Lisa had worked with him before on secret projects, and she knew that when Jake was involved, things were never simple. "Lisa, thank you for coming," Jake said. "I need you to look at this ship and tell me what you think." Lisa walked around the strange vessel. It was about the size of a human cruiser, but it looked much more advanced. The hull seemed to be made of some kind of metal that moved and shifted when she was not looking directly at it. When she touched it, the surface felt warm and almost alive. "Where did this come from?" Lisa asked. "We captured it during a raid on a Kethron outpost," Jake replied. "But here's the strange part. The Kethrons were studying it too. They did not build it. We think it belongs to someone else entirely." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. If there was a third party in the war, someone more advanced than both humans and Kethrons, it could change everything. She had heard rumors about ancient alien races, but she had never believed them until now. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Fix it," Jake said simply. "Make it work again. And while you're doing that, figure out how it works. We need to know what we're dealing with." Lisa nodded and called Tony over. Together, they began to examine the ship more closely. The first thing they noticed was that there were no obvious doors or hatches. The ship seemed to be sealed completely. But as Lisa ran her hands along the hull, a section suddenly became transparent, revealing the interior. Inside, the ship was just as strange as the outside. The walls glowed with a soft blue light, and there were no sharp edges anywhere. Everything curved and flowed together. The control panels looked like they were grown rather than built, with surfaces that reminded Lisa of tree bark or coral. Tony set up his equipment and began scanning the ship's computer systems. "This is incredible," he said. "The power systems are completely different from anything we use. I can't even figure out how they generate energy." Lisa made her way to what she thought was the engine room. The space was filled with a soft humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. In the center of the room was a sphere of light that pulsed gently. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Tony, you need to see this," Lisa called out. Her assistant joined her in the engine room and stared at the glowing sphere. "What is it?" he asked. I think it's their power source, Lisa said, but I have never seen anything like it. It's not nuclear fusion or antimatter. It's something else entirely. As they explored more of the ship, Lisa and Tony found rooms filled with technology they could not understand. There were screens that showed star maps with thousands of solar systems, many of which were not in human or Kethran space. There were devices that seemed to be weapons, but they worked on principles that were completely foreign. The most disturbing discovery was a room filled with what looked like biological components. Parts of the ship seemed to be alive, with tubes and vessels that pulsed like blood vessels. Lisa had never seen technology that mixed living tissue with metal and electronics. Jake, you need to see this, Lisa said into her communicator. The captain arrived a few minutes later and looked around the biological room with wide eyes. What am I looking at? He asked. I think this ship is part machine and part living creature, Lisa explained. Whoever built it has technology that's centuries ahead of ours, maybe thousands of years ahead. Jake was quiet for a long moment. How long will it take you to fix it? Lisa looked around at the alien technology. I don't know. If I can fix it, I don't understand how any of this works. It might take weeks just to figure out the basics. You have whatever time you need, Jake said, and whatever resources you want. This is now the most important project on the station. As Jake left, Lisa felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had thought this was just another repair job, but now she realized she was dealing with something that could change the course of human history. The ship held secrets that could end the war, or it could bring about something much worse. Lisa looked at Tony, who was still staring at the alien technology with amazement. Ready to figure out how this thing works? She asked. Tony grinned. Let's do it. As they began their work, Lisa had no idea that the ship was already beginning to respond to their presence. Deep in its systems, something was waking up after a very long sleep.